The Galactic Unity Academy floated in the darkness of space like a metal flower. It orbited two suns, and the light that came through its windows was always strange, sometimes orange, sometimes blue, sometimes both at once. The station was home to thousands of students from hundreds of different worlds. They came here to learn, to grow, and to understand species that were nothing like themselves. Stood at the entrance of the main corridor and took a deep breath. The air tasted different here. It was cleaner than Earth air, but also emptier somehow, like it was missing something important. He adjusted the strap of his bag and started walking. He was 22 years old, average height, with brown hair that never stayed flat no matter how much he tried to fix it. His eyes were green, and right now they were wide with wonder as he looked around at the alien architecture. The walls seemed to breathe. The floor was made of something that felt soft under his boots. Strange symbols floated in the air, and his translation device worked overtime to turn them into English. "Welcome to Galactic Unity Academy," one sign said. Another said, "Xenobiology wing this way." A third said, "Warning, gravity may vary between sections." Had trained for 2 years on Earth before they let him come here. He had learned about dozens of alien species. He had studied their languages, their customs, their biology. He had passed every test they gave him, but nothing had prepared him for actually being here, surrounded by creatures he had only seen in videos and pictures. A tall being walked past him. It was a recognized the species from his studies. They had skin that was almost see-through, and you could watch their three hearts beating if you looked closely. This one's skin was pale pink, which his training told him meant that was feeling curious. It glanced at, and the pink shifted to white almost instantly. Fear. The walked faster and disappeared around a corner. Frowned but kept moving. Maybe the alien was just in a hurry. Maybe it had somewhere important to be. He tried not to think about it too much. His first class was Advanced Xenobiology 302. He found the room after getting lost twice and asking for directions 3 times. The doors slid open automatically, and 37 pairs of eyes turned to look at him. The room went silent. Saw students near the front, their skin cycling through shades of white and pale blue. He saw students, massive beings with 4 arms and bodies like boulders covered in thick gray hide. He saw insect-like creatures with shiny shells and mandibles that clicked when they were nervous. Right now, every mandible in the room was clicking. The professor was a female named. Her skin went completely white when she saw standing in the doorway. "You must be the human," she said. Her voice was musical but shaky. "The exchange student from Earth." "Yes, ma'am," said. He tried to smile in a friendly way. "Sorry I'm a little late. This station is bigger than I expected." "Please take a seat." Professor gestured toward the back of the room. "There is an empty space near the window." Walked down the aisle between desks. Every student he passed leaned away from him. A student, one of the biggest beings had ever seen, actually pushed his desk back to create more space. The metal legs scraped against the floor with a sound that made everyone wince. Sat down. He put his bag on the floor and pulled out his tablet to take notes. He could feel everyone still staring at him. "Okay," he said quietly to himself. "This is fine, everything is fine." The class continued but barely heard any of it. He was too aware of the empty space around him. No one sat within 3 desks of his position. When the professor asked questions, no one wanted to answer if it meant turning their back to the human. When the class ended, everyone rushed out like the room was on fire. Stayed behind. "Professor," he said, "can I ask you something?" The flinched at the sound of his voice but tried to hide it. "Of course, mister. What do you need?" "Did I do something wrong? Everyone seems." He searched for the right word. "Scared. Did I break some rule I don't know about?" Professor was quiet for a long moment. Her skin shifted through several colors that couldn't identify. Finally, she spoke. "You didn't do anything wrong, mister. It's simply, you are human from Earth, a Class 7. I know what Earth is classified as, said, but I'm just a student. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I believe you, the professor said, though her white skin suggested otherwise. But you must understand, most of the students here have never met a human before. They have only read the reports. They know that your species evolved as persistent predators, that you can survive injuries that would kill most beings in this galaxy, that you consume toxic substances for pleasure. You mean coffee? Among other things. Professor's voice dropped lower. The reports say that humans once hunted prey by chasing them until their hearts exploded from exhaustion, that you have won wars through sheer stubbornness, that you bond with dangerous creatures and keep them in your homes as companions. Thought about his dog back on Earth. That's not entirely wrong, I guess, but it sounds way scarier when you say it like that. To us, it is scary. You are a predator species from a world that actively tries to kill everything that lives on it, and yet you survived, you thrived, you conquered. The professor paused. Can you understand why that might make others nervous? Nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I can. He gathered his things and left the classroom. The corridor outside was empty. Everyone had fled as soon as class ended. Walked back to his small room in the student housing section, sat down on his bed and stared at the wall. His tablet chimed. A message from his sister Amy back on Earth. Hey, how's Space College? Made any alien friends yet? Send pictures. Looked at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, Station is amazing. Classes are interesting, still settling in, will write more soon. He didn't mention the fear in everyone's eyes. He didn't mention eating alone in the cafeteria while other students whispered and pointed. He didn't mention the way the student had moved his desk like was a disease. The weeks that followed were more of the same. Went to class, did his work and tried to be friendly. But every smile was met with suspicion. Every attempt at conversation ended with the other person making an excuse to leave. He learned to eat at odd hours when the cafeteria was empty. He spent most of his free time in the gym, working out alone because no one would share the space with him. 3 months passed. Had memorized the schedule of every student in his section so he could avoid them in the hallways. Not because he was afraid, because he was tired of seeing them be afraid of him. He missed Earth. He missed his family. He missed being seen as a person instead of a monster. But he stayed, because was human and humans didn't give up. Even when they probably should. It happened on what the station called, which was close enough to Thursday that had started using the Earth word in his head. The twin suns were in their orange phase, casting warm light through the classroom windows. Was sitting in his usual spot at the back, alone as always, taking notes on cellular reproduction. The topic was actually interesting. Cells could split and reform in ways that human cells could never manage. Professor was explaining how this allowed them to heal from wounds that would be fatal to most species, and was thinking about how useful that would be for humans when the door exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. Metal fragments scattered across the floor. Students screamed and dove under their desks. Professor made a sound that's translator couldn't process, something between breaking glass and a dying animal's last cry. Standing in the destroyed doorway was the biggest creature had ever seen. It was nearly 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. It had 4 arms, each one ending in claws that curved like knives. Its face was flat, with small eyes that burned with hatred and a mouth full of teeth designed for tearing flesh. It wore the torn remains of a station security uniform, and the dark stains on its body told everything he needed to know about what had happened to the uniform's owner. Recognized them from his studies, though the files had not prepared him for how terrifying they looked in person. They were banned from civilized space for good reason. They were a predator species, not like humans who hunted for food, but something worse. They hunted for fun. They enjoyed killing the way other species enjoyed art or music or good food. The creature stepped into the classroom, broken metal crunching under its clawed feet. "Nobody moves," it said. The translator gave the words a flat, mechanical tone that somehow made them more frightening. "I am here for the professor. The galactic unity destroyed my clan. Now I destroy theirs." Professor pressed herself against the wall behind her desk. Her skin had gone pure white, the color of absolute terror. She was shaking so hard that could see it from across the room. The other students were frozen. The massive who always moved his desk away from was pressed against the far wall, his 4 arms wrapped around himself. The students were clicking in panic, releasing stress chemicals that made the air taste bitter. Nobody ran. Nobody fought. Nobody did anything at all. Leaned back in his chair and laughed. It wasn't a big laugh, just a small chuckle, quiet and dark, but in the silent room it sounded like thunder. It turned its head, those small, burning eyes focused on the human in the back of the room. "Something is funny to you, small thing." Stood up slowly. He was still smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile anymore. It was the smile his ancestors had worn while chasing mammoths across frozen plains. It was the smile humans gave when they decided that something needed to die. "Yeah," said, "actually something is pretty funny." He started walking toward the front of the room. The other students stared at him like he had lost his mind. Maybe he had. 3 months of isolation could do strange things to a person. "For 3 months," continued, his voice calm and conversational, "everyone on this station has treated me like I was the scariest thing they had ever seen. 3 months of people running away when I walk into a room. 3 months of eating alone, studying alone, existing alone, because some report somewhere said that humans are dangerous." He stopped about 10 feet from the creature was watching him with something that might have been confusion. Prey didn't usually walk toward predators. Prey usually ran. "And the whole time," said, "I kept thinking, just give me a chance. Just let me show you who I really am." But nobody wanted to take that chance, because they were afraid of what I might do. He tilted his head, studying the like it was an interesting specimen in a lab. "And now you walk in here. You, a creature from a species known for killing innocent people for sport. You walk in here thinking you're the most dangerous thing in this room, thinking nobody is going to stop you, thinking you can just take whatever you want because you're bigger and meaner than everyone else." His claws flexed. "You talk too much, human. Do you wish to die first? I can arrange that." Smile widened. "See, that's the thing. You've probably never met a human before. You read the reports same as everyone else, but reports don't tell you everything." He took another step forward. The space between them was shrinking. "Reports don't tell you that humans evolved on a world where everything tried to kill us. The weather tried to kill us. The animals tried to kill us. The plants tried to kill us. Even the tiny, invisible organisms that lived inside us tried to kill us." Another step. His forearms tensed, claws spreading wide. "Reports don't tell you that we survived all of that. Not by being the fastest. Not by being the strongest. Not by having claws or venom or scales. We survived by being too stubborn to die. By getting knocked down 1,000 times and getting up 1,001. Was close now, close enough that they could reach out and cut him in half with one swing, but the creature hadn't moved. Something in his eyes had made it pause. "Reports don't tell you," finished, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "that humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by running away from predators." He leaned forward slightly, and his smile became something ancient and terrible. "We became dominant by making predators run from us." They stared at him for a long, silent moment. Then it made a sound that might have been a laugh. Brave words from a small creature with no claws and no armor. "Let us see if your actions match your speech." The alien lunged. 4 arms swept forward in a killing pattern that had ended thousands of lives across dozens of worlds. The claws cut through the air fast enough to whistle. It was an attack designed to shred prey before they could even think about defending themselves, but was no longer standing where he had been. He had started moving before the finished speaking. Because another thing the reports didn't mention was that humans could read body language, had seen the slight shift in the alien's weight, the tiny tensing of muscles before the strike. He had known the attack was coming half a second before it started. In combat, half a second was a lifetime. The battle for the classroom had begun. Moved like water flowing around stone. This first strike cut through empty air where the human had been standing a heartbeat before, had ducked low, letting the upper two arms pass over his head while he the lower two. It was not graceful, it was not pretty, but it worked. He came up inside the alien's guard and drove his elbow into the soft tissue at the base of its throat. They made a choking sound and stumbled backward. Its forearms flailed, claws slicing patterns in the air. One caught the edge of a desk and split the metal like paper. Danced back, putting distance between them. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his teeth. Sweat was already forming on his forehead, but his hands were steady and his eyes never left his enemy. "First lesson," he said, circling slowly to the right. "Humans don't have claws or fangs or armor, but we're really good at finding the places where you don't have them either." The recovered faster than had expected. It straightened up, rubbing its throat with one hand while the other three spread wide in a combat stance. Its small eyes narrowed with something new, respect. "You are fast for a soft creature," it admitted, "but speed alone will not save you." It attacked again. This time it was smarter, using its forearms in a rotating pattern that left no openings. Had to retreat, dodging and weaving between strikes that would have killed him if they connected. He bumped into a desk, stumbled, and barely rolled out of the way as claws shattered the floor where he had been. The students watching from their hiding places under desks made sounds of terror. Professor had her hands over her mouth, her skin so white it was almost transparent. Got back to his feet just in time to catch a backhand strike across his ribs. The impact lifted him off his feet and threw him into the wall. He heard something crack, either the wall or his body, he wasn't sure which. Pain exploded through his chest. Breathing suddenly became very difficult. The pressed its advantage, closing the distance with frightening speed. Pushed off the wall and dove to the side, feeling claws whisper past his ear. He grabbed a chair as he moved and swung it with all his strength. The chair shattered against the alien's shoulder. It did almost no damage, but it bought a second to breathe. He was losing, he knew it. Though was stronger, faster, and had 4 arms to his 2. Every exchange left him more battered while the alien barely seemed affected. This wasn't a fight he could win through skill alone. But that was okay, because humans had never been good at winning through skill alone. They won through something else entirely. The lunged again and this time didn't dodge. He stepped forward into the attack. Claws raked across his left arm, opening 3 deep gashes that immediately started bleeding. Ignored the pain and grabbed one of the alien's wrists with both hands. He pivoted, using the creature's own momentum against it, and drove his knee into the joint where arm met shoulder. The howled. It was the first sound of pain it had made since the fight started. Didn't let go. He kept twisting, kept pulling, kept applying pressure to that joint until something gave way with a wet pop. The alien's lower right arm went limp. "Second lesson," gasped, blood running down his arm and dripping onto the floor. "Pain is just information. We can ignore it when we need to." The ripped free with its remaining 3 arms and slashed wildly. Tried to dodge but wasn't fast enough. Claws caught him across the chest, shredding his shirt and the skin beneath it. More blood, bright red against the classroom's pale floor. But was still standing. He grabbed a piece of the broken chair, a metal leg with a jagged end, and charged. What followed was not a battle, it was a war of attrition. There was bigger, stronger, and better armed. It had evolved for combat over millions of years. Its scales turned aside blows that would have killed lesser creatures. Its claws could cut through metal, but kept coming. Every time the alien knocked him down, he got back up. Every time those claws found flesh, he kept fighting. He targeted the joints, the eyes, the sensitive spots between scales where armor couldn't protect. He used broken furniture as weapons, threw equipment as distractions, and at one point wrapped himself around this arm and bit down on the exposed flesh at its wrist hard enough to draw blood. Green blood, the bled green. The creature screamed and threw him off, hit a desk, rolled, and came up swinging the metal chair leg like a club. It connected with the side of the alien's head, producing a sound like a bell being struck. The staggered. For the first time since the fight began, it looked uncertain. Stood in the middle of the ruined classroom, covered in blood both red and green. His left arm hung at a bad angle. His chest was a mess of cuts that were still bleeding freely. One of his eyes was swelling shut from a blow he didn't even remember taking. But he was still standing, and he was still smiling. "Third lesson," he said, his voice rough and unsteady. "Humans don't know when to quit, it's kind of our whole thing." The looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time seeing not prey, but a fellow predator. A creature that refused to die no matter how much damage it took. A being that treated mortal wounds as minor inconveniences. "What are you?" it whispered. Smile turned into something that showed teeth. "I'm human, and I'm really, really stubborn." He charged one final time. The met his charge, claws sweeping down in a killing blow, but was already moving inside the strike, too close for the claws to be effective. He drove the jagged metal chair leg into the soft tissue under the alien's chin, angled upward. The eyes went wide. Its arms spasmed once, twice, then went still. It fell backward like a collapsing building, hitting the floor with a crash that shook the entire room. Stood over the fallen alien, swaying on his feet. The chair leg was still in his hand, dripping green. His own blood was forming a pool around his boots. The room was silent except for his ragged breathing and the distant hum of the station's engines. He turned to look at the students still hiding under their desks. They stared back at him with expressions that were hard to read. Fear, yes, but also something else. Something that might have been wonder. "Can someone," said, his voice barely above a whisper, "maybe call medical? I think I'm going to." He didn't finish the sentence. His legs gave out, and he collapsed next to his defeated enemy, red blood mixing with green on the classroom floor. The last thing he heard before consciousness left him was Professor screaming for help. Opened his eyes to white light and the soft beeping of machines. For a moment he didn't know where he was. The ceiling above him was smooth and curved, made of some material that seemed to glow from within. The air smelled like nothing, completely clean, completely sterile. His body felt strange, like it belonged to someone else. Then the pain arrived, and he remembered everything. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Fire spread across his chest, his arm, his ribs. A sound came out of his mouth that was somewhere between a groan and a curse. "Please don't move." The voice was musical and familiar. Turned his head slowly and saw Professor standing beside his bed. Her skin was shifting through colors he didn't recognize, blue and gold and something that might have been purple. "The doctors say you need to remain still for at least another day." "How long?" His voice came out as a croak. He swallowed and tried again. "How long was I out?" 3 days. Your body almost failed several times during that period." The professor's skin pulsed with that strange purple color. Translator finally identified it, profound gratitude mixed with lingering disbelief. "You lost more blood than most species have in their entire bodies. The medical team had to synthesize more from your genetic template. That explains why I feel like someone replaced my blood with cold water." That is actually quite accurate from a medical standpoint. Professor's mouth moved in what might have been a smile. It was hard to tell with, "May I ask you a question, mister? After everything, I think you can call me." Then, the professor folded her long, delicate hands together. "Why did you do it? You owe nothing to this station or to any of us. We treated you terribly for months. We avoided you, feared you, made you feel unwelcome. And yet when danger came, you stood between us and death. Why?" Was quiet for a long moment, staring at the glowing ceiling. It was a good question. He had asked himself the same thing during those endless moments of combat, when his body was failing and every instinct screamed at him to run. "I grew up on a farm," he said finally. "Small place in a state called Montana. My dad raised cattle and my mom taught at the local school. Nothing special, nothing heroic, just normal people living normal lives." He paused, gathering his thoughts. It hurt to talk, but this felt important. "When I was 12, a wildfire swept through our area. Fast-moving, unpredictable. My dad grabbed me and my sister Amy and put us in the truck to evacuate. But then he saw that our neighbor's barn was on fire with horses still inside. So he stopped the truck, told us to keep driving, and ran toward the flames." Professor's skin shifted to a darker shade. "What happened?" "He got the horses out. Burned his hands pretty badly doing it, but he saved them. When I asked him later why he did it, why he risked his life for animals that weren't even his, he just shrugged and said it's what people do." Turned his head to look at the professor. "That's the thing about humans, Professor. We're not heroes, we're not special, we're just people. And when people see someone in trouble, we help, even if it's dangerous, even if it hurts, even if the person we're helping was afraid of us yesterday." That seems, the professor searched for words, inefficient from a survival standpoint. "Probably," managed a small smile. "But it's also why we survived as a species. One human alone is pretty fragile, but humans who work together, who protect each other, who refuse to leave anyone behind, that's something else entirely. That's how we conquered a world that was trying to kill us. Not through strength or speed, but through stubbornness and the crazy belief that every life matters." The door to the medical room opened before the professor could respond. Entered, his massive frame barely fitting through the doorway. Behind him came several other students from the xenobiology class, and even a few species didn't recognize. Stopped at the foot of his bed, his forearms fidgeting in a way that suggested nervousness. "Human, I mean, we came to. That is, we wanted to." "We wanted to apologize," one of the students clicked. Translator worked overtime to capture the nuance in the alien's rapid clicking. "For how we treated you before. It was wrong." "More than wrong," rumbled. His voice was deep enough to vibrate's bed. "We looked at you and saw only what the reports told us to see. A predator, a threat, a creature from a death world who might hurt us at any moment." "We didn't see you," another student added, a young, her skin cycling through shades of shame purple. "We didn't try to see you, and that was our failing, not yours." Looked at the collection of aliens gathered around his bed. For 3 months, these were the same people who had avoided his eyes in the hallway, who had refused to sit near him in class, who had whispered about him when they thought he couldn't hear. And now they were here, apologizing, their body language showing genuine remorse. "You know," said slowly, "where I come from, there's a saying. Don't judge a book by its cover. It means you shouldn't decide you know someone based on how they look or where they're from." "We have a similar expression in culture," admitted, "though ours involves not judging prey by its size." He paused, and something that might have been humor crossed his rocky face. "Apparently, it applies to predators as well." "Apparently." The student stepped closer, mandibles clicking in what's translator identified as hopeful nervousness. "We were wondering if you would perhaps like to join our study group. We meet in the common area on rest days. There is food and conversation, and sometimes we help each other with assignments." Blinked. In 3 months, this was the first time anyone had invited him anywhere. Yeah, I would like that. I would really like that. Professor made a soft sound. When looked at her, her skin had shifted to a warm gold that his translator identified as genuine happiness. It seems, she said, that sometimes it takes a crisis to remind us of what truly matters. I am glad you survived, and I am glad you came to this station, even if we made your time here difficult. Honestly, shifted slightly, wincing as his injuries protested. I was thinking about requesting a transfer back to Earth. The isolation was getting to me, but now. He looked around at the faces watching him, alien faces, strange faces, but faces that were finally seeing him as a person. Now I think I might stick around for a while, if that's okay with everyone. Made a sound that's translator identified as a laugh. After what you did, human, you could probably take over this station if you wanted. I don't think anyone would try to stop you. Nah settled back into his pillow, exhaustion washing over him. Taking over sounds like a lot of work. I think I'll just make some friends instead. It was strange, he thought as his eyes drifted closed. He had come to this station hopping to learn about alien species, to expand his understanding of the galaxy, to grow as a person. Instead, he had spent 3 months alone, treated like a monster because of where he came from. And then he had nearly died fighting a real monster, and somehow that had changed everything. The galaxy was weird. But maybe, decided, weird wasn't so bad. 6 months had passed since the day a killer walked into xenobiology class. The station looked the same as always, metal corridors stretching in every direction, strange symbols floating in the air, artificial gravity that sometimes felt a little off if you paid too much attention. The twin suns still cast their orange and blue light through the windows, and the air still tasted cleaner than anything on Earth. But everything else had changed. Walked through the main corridor with at his side. The massive had to slow his stride to match the human's pace, but he did so without complaint. They had been doing this for months now, walking to class together, eating meals together, spending their free time together. What had started as an awkward attempt at friendship had become something real and solid and important. The professor wants us to present our research next week, rumbled. I still don't understand why human muscles don't tear themselves apart during prolonged exertion. It's the lactic acid buffering system, explained for probably the 20th time. Our bodies build up a tolerance to pain over time. Plus, we have these special proteins that prevent cellular damage during extended. Yes, yes, the science parts, waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. What I don't understand is why you would evolve such a system. What possible purpose could it serve to keep running when every part of your body screams at you to stop? Grinned, on Earth, we used to hunt animals by chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. Sometimes it took hours, sometimes it took days. The animals were always faster than us in short bursts, but humans just kept going. Eventually, the prey would give up. Their bodies would fail, and then we would catch them. Was silent for a long moment. Your species is terrifying. Thanks, I think. They reached the common area, where the rest of their study group was already gathered. The students had claimed their usual corner, their mandibles clicking in animated conversation. Several sat nearby, their translucent skin showing calm blues and greens that indicated relaxation and contentment. Even Professor was there, which was unusual. She normally spent rest days in her office. A young named I waved him over. She had been one of the most afraid of him before the incident, always sitting as far away as possible during class. Now she saved a seat for him every time. We were just discussing the latest news. Have you heard? Dropped into the saved seat, grimacing slightly as his still-healing ribs protested. The doctors said he would make a full recovery, but some injuries took longer to heal than others. Heard what? The Galactic Unity Council released a new statement about Earth, Professor said. Her skin was showing that warm gold color had learned to associate with happiness. They are officially reconsidering the Class 7 designation. Wait, really? The story of what happened here spread throughout the station, explained, and then throughout the sector, and then throughout the Unity. It seems that many beings were interested in the tale of a human who fought a warrior with nothing but broken furniture and stubbornness. One of the students clicked rapidly. His translator rendered it as, "The security footage has been viewed over 3 billion times on the Galactic Information Network. You are famous." Felt his face getting warm. I didn't do it for fame, the professor was in danger. The whole class was in danger. I couldn't just stand there and watch. That, Professor said softly, is precisely why the Council is reconsidering. The old classification focused only on human physical capabilities, your endurance, your resistance to injury, your predatory instincts. It said nothing about your social bonds, your protective instincts, your capacity for self-sacrifice. The new proposal, I added, includes additional categories. Threat level, yes, but also ally potential, loyalty indices, friendship compatibility scores. Burst out laughing. He couldn't help it. The idea of a galactic government trying to quantify friendship was absurd in the best possible way. Friendship compatibility scores, that's not how friendship works. Perhaps not for humans, said, but for species that have never encountered anything like you before, some framework is necessary. How else are we supposed to know if approaching a human is safe? You could just talk to us. The study group exchanged glances. Several of them made sounds that's translator identified as embarrassed acknowledgement. Yes, Professor admitted. That would have been the wiser course, but wisdom often comes slowly, especially to those who have been taught to fear. His tablet chimed. A message from Earth, from Amy. He had been writing to her regularly since the incident, actually telling her the truth about what had happened. She had responded with a mixture of terror, pride, and sisterly threats about what she would do if he ever scared her like that again. This message was shorter than usual. Hey, big brother. Saw the news about the Council reconsidering Earth's classification. Does this mean you're like an ambassador now? Mom wants to know if you need her to send cookies. Also, Dad says to tell you he's proud of you, which you know is a big deal because he never says that to anyone. Smiled and typed back. Not an ambassador, just a student who made some friends. Tell Mom cookies would be amazing. The food here is nutritious but boring. And tell Dad. Tell him I learned from the best. He sent the message and looked up at the beings gathered around him. Who had once been afraid to sit near him. Students who had once fled when he entered a room. Who had once turned white with terror at the sight of him. A professor who had once warned him about his own terrifying nature. Now they were his friends, his family, in a way that had nothing to do with blood or species or the planet he came from. So, said, putting his tablet away, what are we studying today? Comparative evolutionary biology, I said, specifically how different species develop social bonding mechanisms. She paused, her skin shifting to a playful purple that had learned meant she was teasing. I suggested we use you as a case study. Me. You bonded with an entire classroom of beings who treated you like a dangerous animal for 3 months, pointed out, after nearly dying to protect them. From a social bonding perspective, that is unusual. Unusual is a generous word, one of the clicked. Inexplicable might be more accurate. Considered this. Okay, fair point. Humans are kind of weird about bonding. We'll bond with anything, honestly. Dogs, cats, birds, fish, random objects we've owned for too long. There's probably someone on Earth right now who has formed an emotional attachment to a rock. A rock, repeated flatly. A really nice rock. The study group stared at him in collective disbelief. Then Professor made a sound that's translator identified as laughter, the first time he had ever heard a laugh. This, she said, her skin glowing warm gold, is why the classification system needed revision. No threat assessment could ever capture. She gestured at with one delicate hand. This. I'm going to choose to take that as a compliment. It was intended as one. The study session continued, filled with questions and debates and the kind of friendly arguments that had missed so much during his months of isolation. At some point, someone produced a tray of snacks that technically violated several station health codes, tried something that looked like purple cheese and tasted like strawberries, and decided not to ask any questions. Later, walking back to his quarters stopped at a window and looked out at the stars. They were different from Earth's stars, arranged in unfamiliar patterns, burning in unfamiliar colors. But somehow, they felt like home now. You are thinking deep thoughts, observed. I can tell because you get a particular expression on your face. Your eyebrows do a thing. My eyebrows do a thing. A very specific thing, yes. Laughed and shook his head. I was just thinking about how different things are now compared to when I first arrived, how scared everyone was of me, how alone I felt, and how one terrible moment changed everything. The incident rumbled. Yeah, I almost died in that classroom, but I also became real, I guess. Before that, I was just the human, a category, not a person. The fight forced everyone to see me as an individual, someone who made choices, who felt fear, who risked everything for people who had given him nothing. Was quiet for a moment. Among my people, there is a saying, true character is revealed not in times of peace, but in times of crisis. We have something similar. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Your species and mine are perhaps not so different after all. Smiled and clapped his massive friend on the shoulder, or as close to the shoulder as he could reach, given their height difference. Maybe that's the whole point. Maybe we're all not so different once we actually bother to look. They continued walking, leaving the window and the unfamiliar stars behind. Somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the galactic unity, a clerk was finalizing the new classification for Earth. Class 7, inhabitants extremely dangerous but also extremely loyal. Approach with caution but also approach. Never saw that document. He didn't need to. He had already proven its contents in the only way that mattered, not through words or official designations but through actions. Through standing up when everyone else cowered, through fighting when everyone else fled, through offering friendship to those who had given him only fear. That was the human way. And as the galaxy was slowly learning, the human way was worth understanding. Even if it did involve emotional attachments to rocks.